Good morning. It's a blessing to be here with you guys this morning. I'm so happy for the opportunity again to come and present something in front of you. I was invited last year, and Tony was like, "You're going to do a workshop for us, but can you do the presentation you've done last year? Because there's a lot of new people who is coming." So if you're here last year, I apologize. We eat rice every day, and that's okay. So I hope that if you hear the same thing, and I promise there's something here that I've added, and hopefully it will be a blessing for many of us this time. I'm very happy because every time I talk to leaders, I get the opportunity to at least challenge. And this message or this lecture is a little bit challenging. It's not going to be easy for me to present, and it might be a little uncomfortable. But I hope you bear with me, and I like challenging our church as an organization. I'm always, most of the time, labeled as someone who's very angry at church. I am not. I'm very supportive of the church. But I would love to challenge the church most of the time, especially in innovation. Tito Manny has talked about innovation, and hopefully this will be a challenge about that also. The Adventist Church started, and it was established mainly because people and our leaders are innovators, right? And I believe that in order for us to move forward, that spirit should continue. And so a little background, my name is Jasper. I'm a filmmaker, and I'm a field coordinator for a NGO called Child Impact International. Child Impact International is basically an organization that is present in about 20 countries around the world. We build orphanages, we build schools. And so I'm the filmmaker. I travel around, build schools. You might be wondering why I'm wearing a bracelet like this. This is a bracelet from Africa and Tanzania. We have a little orphanage there that we rescue girls who have gone through female genital mutilation, which means they're it's very graphic. I don't know how to explain it to you. But anyways, their sexual genitals are cut off, women. And so they made it for me. And so this is very special. Africa is very special to me. That's why I was very encouraged to go out there and to build schools for kids in Africa. So that's mainly what I do today. So with that background, I just want to invite you with a word of prayer. Father in heaven, we thank you for giving us the opportunity to come and study your word. I pray that you please bless us this morning. Take away all the distractions in our hearts and mind, that our hearts, Lord, will focus with you today. I pray that you give us understanding. Give us wisdom. But most of all, I pray that the message will be practical in each field, that each person sitting here, that they could apply, Lord, in their own respective divisions and unions and conferences. In Christ's name, amen. So today I'm going to talk about making content in 2024. Adventism in 2024. Now, just a little background. I used to be a full-time pastor. I'm a graduate of Central Philippine Adventist College. I was a full-time pastor for about 4 years in Indonesia. I was a pastor for Jakarta International Seventh-day Adventist Church. And then I received this calling. This was way before media ministry blew up, so it was very difficult. I did not really have a template to follow. So when I was a pastor, I had this call to follow my passion in photography and filmmaking. So I decided to step down, resign from my pastoral ministry, and went to Europe, did all these ministries, media ministries. It was very, very difficult. Now, I started this with this story because I grew up with a concept that the highest form of ministry is being a pastor. Growing up in Negros Island, growing up in Central Philippine Adventist College, I grew up in a culture where people told me, hey, you want to do ministry, you need to become a pastor. The highest form of ministry is being a pastor. And so when I resigned as a pastor and followed my passion in media ministry, I received so much criticism and so much doubts because I need to be in the pulpit. In fact, when I had my first camera, when I was a pastor in Jakarta, one of the church members told me, Jasper, you should not be holding a camera, you should be in the pulpit preaching. That is what God has called you to do. In other words, I was in this box. And every time, and I remember this, whenever we have conversation in ministry, our leaders and our pastors would always tell me, Jasper, think about outside the box. Whenever you do ministry, think outside the box, right? And so I was talking to a friend of mine when I was in U.S. in Portland, and he was saying, Jasper, we're always told to think outside the box. And he told me that I'll never forget. He said, why don't we just get rid of the box? Why do we need to be in a box? Right? And so from there I said, yeah, that's true. Why do I need to be in a box anyways? So I filed out my resignation, went and did full-time ministry. This was very difficult. This was one of the most difficult things I've ever done because I was told I'm doing the holiest work. Probably because of the colonial mindset of the Philippines, that we only need to respect the priest and all that, the holy people. So stepping down was very, very difficult. But I stumbled upon this quotation from Ellen White. This is from Review and Herald, July 23, 1895. She says, method to be improved. There must be, what everyone? What was that? There must be no fixed rules. Our work is what kind of work? Progressive work. And there must be room left for methods to be improved upon. But under the guidance of the Holy Spirit, unity and will must be preserved. Now notice this. She said that methods should be improved. Are you following so far? There is no fixed rules. That's very difficult for us to grasp sometimes because we're always living in that box. I was like that. Oh, I can't do that. I can't do this, right? But she said there must be no fixed rules. Today, I'm going to talk about some principles. I remember this was when was this, Larice? 2000 something in COVID. Larice and my friend, she did this lecture about branding. And then I took some of those principles and I realized, man, that principles I've been using for years. So I just want to give a little shout out to my friend Larice for giving me those points. This was very practical to me, and I hope this will be practical to you and to your unions and divisions and missions too. This is not only applicable in your content in social media, but it's also very applicable in your sermons, in your mission work, whatever context it is very, very applicable. So number one point that I remember she was talking about was relevance. In order for you to be keeping up, in order for us to keep up in 2024, the number one thing that we need to always consider is relevance. If it's not relevant, it is very difficult for us to exist long. The only reason why Adventism has existed this long is because our message has always been relevant and it's always been packaged and moves as time goes by. Now, I'll explain that as we move forward. That means it needs to be audience-centric. We have this concept that if it's older, then it's holier. Are you following with me? We have this concept. The older it is, the holier it is. If it's not old, it's not holy. If it's new, it's compromised. Have you heard this before? Remember HMS Richards when he invented gospel and radio? He was the first Adventist who did the radio thing. And everyone told him that you're compromising the church because the radio is evil. Because people believe that it needs to be old for it to be holy. Someone once says this. Tradition is the living faith of the dead, while traditionalism is the dead faith of the living. Which is true. I read this in Facebook somewhere. Tradition is peer pressure from dead people. Right? That's what tradition is. We have this concept that it needs to be old, and anything new should be shunned. Ellen White said in the book Evangelism, she said, whatever may have been your former practice, it is not necessary to what, everyone? Repeat it again and again in the same way. God would have new and untried methods followed. Break in upon the people, surprise them. As a meme I found on the internet about a helicopter pilot with a camera person. That is in 2009. And then in 2019, a drone was invented. You don't need a pilot and a camera person. In just 10 years, the cameraman and pilot both lost their jobs. You need to upgrade yourself. It's kind of funny, but it's true. Now think about this. If there was no shift in media ministry during COVID, you think the church would be relevant? It's a lecture, by the way, so it's okay to talk back to the speaker. You're scaring me by your poker faces. But no, think about this. If we did not shift to media ministry during COVID, what would happen to our church? Cease to exist, right? It would cease to exist. And those people who've been saying Facebook is evil and TikTok is evil, they're all live streaming now on Facebook. But in order for the church to move forward, we need to grasp change. Are you following so far? But we're so allergic to change that the Lord needs to send COVID to slap at our face and say, dude, media ministry is the way. We waited for COVID to prove that we need to shift our evangelism. We always wait for a crisis to do something. But that's a trend in the Bible. Remember the book of Acts? They were gathering with mega churches, and then God sent Paul to persecute them, and now there's home churches everywhere in the world. The gospel spread. We always wait for a crisis, but I always love how Paul says it in the Bible. He says, crisis equals to opportunity. And so whenever there's crisis, there's always an opportunity. And so when COVID came, the church embraced change. And I'm so grateful with that. So there's always that change. I talked about this guy, HMS Richard, was called about compromise. You're compromising the church by putting in radio. But he started all this, right? Embracing change. So what I'm telling you, leaders, is instead of cursing the darkness, let's light a candle instead. And the church is so good at cursing the darkness. That's bad. You should not do that. That's bad. That's evil. You're wasting your time. Instead of cursing the darkness, let's just light a candle. Let's light a candle instead. Albert Einstein says that, I'm not really sure if this is an Albert Einstein quote. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. You cannot be expecting a different result if you're doing the same thing over and over. This is one of my favorite Ellen White quotes. She said, the methods and means by which we reach certain ends are not always the same. The missionary must use reason and what, everyone? Judgment. Changes for the better must be made. So this is a very important point. We need to embrace change as a church. That's what she is advocating. One of the things that, okay, I've always been asked this. How do we even embrace change then? How do we embrace change? One of the things that I considered when I was starting media ministry, I sat down on a computer one time and asked myself, do you understand your audience? That was the number one thing I considered. How do I reach these people? Not in an institutional way, but how do I personally reach them in a more personal way? So I was trying to understand my audience. I sat down there and said, how do I reach out these people? Let me tell you the problems. I used to work as a pastor. I think one of the most problematic things that we do in ministry is, let me describe this one. I described our ministry sometimes are like the Greek gods. You see the Greek gods in the story. We're like on an ivory tower somewhere, and we look at people from above, and we do a board meetings, and instead of understanding them, we look at them from an ivory tower, and we decide to them what they need. So whenever we do a meeting, for example, let's go to Cagayan de Oro, or let's go to Negros. We do our board meeting from an ivory tower, and we decide, what do they need? Bingo, they need books. So we go around, we give them books. We need an evangelistic campaign. That's what they need, right? Without considering what they really need, we just decide for them. Are you following so far? And so we go around and say, hey, we need 10,000 books. And we give it around. Right? That's what we do. We decide for the people. But I realized this. The gospel requires an authentic connection. In content, you can never have an authentic connection without relevance. If it's not relevant to people, you can never connect to them. Are you following so far? So no matter what you do, if it does not establish the right connection, it will never be relevant to people. And if it's not relevant, the gospel will not grow at people's hearts. Are you following? But we like to just stroke it to everyone. Oh, ganito na lang. This is what we do. This is what we do. The only way to establish authentic connection is just when it's relevant to people. I'll be super candid to you guys. This is the problem that we have most of the time in communication. It is not relevant to people. We're just stroking everyone and say, this is what they need. They need a revelation seminar. They need a health clinic. And it's all templated around the world. Even though the prophet says it's different for everyone. That's why the church is becoming irrelevant. And this is my fear as a young leader at church. Because truth is more than just information. Truth is a person. When you consider truth as just mere information, you can never connect to your audience. So most of our evangelism is either doing Sabbath school, doing sermons, doing debate evangelisms. We have stuff like this. We debate other people, and we think that's evangelism. But we cannot apply things to everyone. Our ministry is just one brush of a stroke. This is why I'm trying to challenge you guys. It's supposed to be different than everyone else. It's not supposed to be one brush of a stroke for everyone. This is why we're doing ComLab, right? To understand what our audience really need. Okay. So, let me just read this quotation. Powerful one. You know what? I'm just going to skip this one because I have 3 minutes left. Let me give you something that I personally considered as very powerful in terms of creating content. I can't give you all the things that I know, but I'll tell you something really, really powerful. I realized as I do content and I sat down there, what do my audience need? I realized that empathy is one of the most powerful tools to reach the 21st century generation, especially in 2024. Now I'll explain more as we move forward. Caleb, one of my friends in Portland, Oregon, once says this: before anyone's going to care about your theology, they're going to ask what kind of person that theology has made you into. This is a very powerful quote. Now, why? I really believe that in the 21st century, empathy is the new authority. Now, I'll move forward with that one. I really think one of the reasons why we're losing audience as a church is because we're so focused so much in religious authority, thinking that people listened because we're pastors. If you look at people, especially the elites, people like Tito Manny, people really don't listen to you because you have a religious position. People listen to you not because you're an institution. And I'll say this really bluntly: people don't follow institutions, they follow people. Are you following? People don't follow. I'm talking in behalf of Gen Zs and millennials leaders. People don't follow institutions anymore. We're not living in that age anymore. People follow people. And when they see authentic people, they see real people, they follow it. Not because they follow an institution. This is why there are people at your church who has more followers than your church organizations. Are you following? Because people are attracted to authenticity, not organization. People don't like that when I say it, but that's true. You ask Gen Zs, promise you, ask your kids. Your kids probably has followed a YouTuber more than the SSD Facebook page. That's true. Because people wanted authenticity more than the organization. That's just the reality of things in Facebook and in Instagram. So, fast forward. I need to be relevant. This is why we're losing a lot of our young people. Our our net loss in the church is 42%. 4 out of 10 Adventists are leaving the church. This is statistics from the GC archives. We're losing a lot of young people because we're becoming irrelevant. We're forcing them to listen to us because we are in a religious authority. That don't work anymore. There's a meme I found out this one. Pastors when churches that refuse to change and adopt act surprised that all their youth have left. We need to adapt or else we're going to lose a lot of young people. A lot of people. In SSD, we've lost 1,149,000. This is 65% in the past 25 years. This is a stat. I can go more, on and on. But Max Durpee said this: the first responsibility of a leader is to identify reality. That's your work, and that's my work. Tony, my time is up. I haven't even gone to the next one. Okay, I'll be very, very fast. Sorry. Friends, when you create content, and if you win your audience in 2024, start with empathy. Don't start with religious authority. Whoa, pastor is coming and he's going to tell us that Jesus is coming. No one's going to come. I promise you that. Talk to your young people. Empathy is a way to gather people. I'll show you something. I'll show you something really important. When I was in San Bernardino, this was COVID, church is closed. And I talked to my friend and he said, bro, how do we do ministry anymore? Because we cannot go to church. A friend of mine said, hey, let's go to San Bernardino, which is close to Loma Linda, one of the most dangerous cities in the United States. He said, instead of bringing people to church, why don't we bring church to the people? We don't need to do evangelism like our normal way. We'll just come, bring Burger King, vegetarian Burger King, don't judge me, vegetarian. So we brought them vegetarian Burger King, and we sat down with them for 4 hours every day for 7 months. Sat down with them every day. So instead of bringing them to church, we bring church to them. Instead of bringing them to a meeting, we meet them where they are. Are you following so far? And so we sat down with them. We brought church to them. We know their names. We sat down with them. They know their needs. We have people helping them to apply and make resumes for work. We do all these things for our homeless friends. It's no longer we versus them. It's just us. Are you following? We sat down with them. We eat with them. No Bible studies, no agendas. We don't consider them as projects. We consider them as people. We sat down with them every day. No campaigns, whatever. Sat down. Let's just tell them that you belong before you believe. Just eat with you guys. After 7 months, we have 30 people baptized. 30 people baptized. I'll tell you, it works. Communion, conversion blossoms from communion. These are the people we baptized there in San Bernardino. We sat down with them every day. But it's not sexy to report because it took 7 months. But it works. It works. Empathy works to do as evangelism. I'll give you an example. When I was in Ukraine during the war, when Putin announced, we're going to war against Ukraine, Russia. And then after a week, I went to Ukraine. And then I told my team, hey, I'm going to Ukraine. It's one of our pictures there in Ukraine when I was there. This was my friend Johan. So I'll show you some of the pictures I took when I was there. Ukraine was in a very bad state, right? So my team and I came up and says, you know what? Let's do something in Ukraine. They don't need an evangelistic campaign in Ukraine, innit? Right? Just come there. And so we did some stuff for Ukraine. We have a bus. We fill it up with food from Germany. We drove 30 hours to Kyiv. We dropped the food and we filled the bus with people. And the man cannot go, unfortunately, so only the mothers can go. We fill the bus with kids and mothers, right? And every single week we go there. This is my friend Johan. Every single week we will go there and we'll fill the bus with people. And in Germany, whenever the bus arrives, a friend of mine, this is from a company in Austria called Optimo near Bogenhofen University. He opened this is like a Mandawi Foam. It's a very big mattress company. They opened their, what's that called? A showroom. Instead of putting a showroom, they created beds for the refugees. So they put in refugees every single day. This is their beds. And not only that, the Seventh-day Adventist Church asked their members to adapt families from Ukraine. The families from Ukraine who came as refugees have free food, free shelter, free education, free transport, everything's for free. And if you go to Ukraine, in the border, people from Ukraine, because they texted their families during the war, whenever they go out, they told them, go and find the Adventist bus. So you go to that border, instead of going to Red Cross, instead of going to UNICEF, go to those people, they always ask, where's the Adventist bus? Because they're treated well. That's the kind of communication we want. We should be known for what we are, not what we just are against. Are you following? This is what's supposed to be evangelism is. And communication is. Another example, this was in the jungle school. When we built the jungle school, I was there for 7 months. They have a helicopter that rescues them whenever they're sick. And all these things. When I stayed there for about 7 months, and after 7 months, we opened the school and the registration came. And the fathers came up to me and he said, during the registration, their names, their address, their age, and one of the papers that they do registration is religion. And they asked me, Jasper, what are we again? That's what they said. What are we again? And I said, I'm a Seventh-day Adventist. I don't know. It's up to you. What do you want to be? But I'm a Seventh-day Adventist. And then the fathers told me, okay, we want to be like that too. So all the people and the parents and the kids, they're all Seventh-day Adventists even before they heard the doctrines. And of course, they eventually had a Bible study and they'll all be baptized, right? But I don't tell people this. The jungle school is basically a church plant. It's a church planting. And we have now 6 jungle schools, so we have 6 churches, right? But I don't advertise it to my friends as a church plant. Are you following? So this is what it's supposed to be, empathy. Tony, come. Maybe we'll just do Q&A. Yeah. Because it's already time.
Yeah, so maybe to continue, Jap, let's sit down over here.
Yes.
And I'll ask you a couple questions. Thank you, Jasper, for enlightening us on... Maybe you take that side?
Yes.
I'll take this side. One of the reasons we wanted yourself and Sir Manny to come, because I know that working in media, sometimes we're in our own little box. And the box is literal. Sometimes it's a room. And somebody will walk in, excuse me, and say, I need this, and that. And of course, it's on a deadline, it's things like that. And creativity becomes limited. Innovation, and we forget, even in some aspects, empathy to reach out to people. And that's one of the reasons I asked both of you to present before we even start other sessions here this morning. The first question I want to throw at you, bro, is on relevance. You talked about it, you showed some photos of your experience reaching out to people. But on the media platform, where's the starting point for someone who works with graphics and pictures and videos or making scripts thereof? Where does the relevance begin? Or how can someone start to become relevant?
Yeah, so I think one of the things when I was doing my content, the number one thing that I've always considered is that, is my content approachable enough? Is my content approachable enough? You don't create content because for the sake of making content. You're creating content because you know it needs to be approachable for people. A friend of mine once said to me, Tony, the church is like a Chinese company selling a book in German in Mexico. Mm-hmm. It's confusing, right? It needs to be approachable enough. In fact, I have a slide here that I want to show.
Jason?
Yeah, if you can. Someone says,
give it a sec.
Bernard Shaw once says this: the single biggest problem in communication is the illusion that it has taken place. And I think many of us think that it has happened. communication, but it's not approachable enough for people to understand. So the best thing that you really need to do first is to sit down to people and ask them where they are. And when you put a broad stroke, this is why most of our evangelism doesn't really hit, because, okay, can I do the 1 to 10 thing?
Sure.
I think that's
Yeah, sure.
Okay. For example, if we could do the slides here,
I think he needs me.
he needs you, Tony.
Yeah.
Right, I'll show you another slide here that I think will give you a little understanding of how my brain works when I do my content in social media. All right, cool. Okay, see this number? We have 1 to 10. Tony's question is how to be relevant, right? So you have 1 to 10, for example. So let's pretend you see this wording here. 1 is, like, say, people like atheists, or they have no religious background, right? That's a 1. No religious background, don't want to be religious at all. Number 5, kind of religious, sometimes goes to church, sometimes not. And number 10 is super duper religious. Whenever I do my content, I always consider this. Where are those people at? 1 to 10. Are they super religious, not really religious, or highly religious? Right? For example, this is how our pioneers worked. You will not like this, but I'll tell you this. The pioneers, when they started the Seventh-day Adventist Church, they lived on an agricultural era, meaning they worked farming as farmers. They work in sunrise, farming, and then at night, what do? They don't have entertainment. They don't have cell phones, no electricity. What do? They sleep. Occasionally, people will come in a circus or a band. They pitch a tent and they have a circus at night. Whoa, now, even though there's no electricity, there's music, there's unusual shows. People come and listens to it. That's why there's comedy shows, there are theaters like this. And so, the Adventist Church thought, what do? Where are these people at? 1 to 10. During Ellen White's time, because of William Miller, people's religious awakening is number 10. Jesus about to come, 1844. All these things, right? They're so religious in their mindset because the message has been spread around North America. So they said, let's do something too to meet people where they are. So you know what they did? They also put up a tent, like a circus. But it's different. It's not sensual, nothing really bad. It's a speaker and a singer and a choir. People can come, they listen to it, and they'll enjoy it. Why? Because their religious awakening is so up high there. Are you following so far? Did you get the point? That's why people flock, and HMS Richard Sr. could go on evangelistic campaign for 9 months. Did you hear HMS Richard did that? He did a crusade for 9 months straight, and people still come. Because there's nothing to do at night. Are you following so far? Right? And so that's why we've done camp meetings. Whenever we do posters, our posters are like this. Beasts, dragons, all these things. Right? Because it attracts the attention of people where they're at. Are you following? The problem is, we apply the same thing to Pasay, and we wonder why no one is going. And we accuse people of being worldly. You know why? Satan is disturbing them. That's why. They're not listening. No, the Adventist Church is very relevant. They came in because that was where people are. Ellen White says this, the classes of people you meet will decide for you the way in which your work should be handled. There is no fixed template to ministry. It adapts to where people are at. Are you following so far?
Right.
And so, I asked Tony, whenever I come to people, whenever I go to university secular, 1 to 10, I ask that, 1 to 10. So I message adapt. If it's a 5, then my message is a 5. I did a meeting in SMX with a bunch of people from Sun Life, and the president of Sun Life was there. I can't give them a 10. Are you following? I can't give them a 10. It's supposed to be where they at. That's why someone said, The church is calibrated for a world that no longer exists. We're still pushing that agenda. That's why we're ceasing to be relevant. I'll finish now, Tony. Remember, I did a Tony Gonzaga talk, Tony Talks. It has almost 1 million views. I received calls from pastors, Tony. Literally, I received a call from pastors and said, Jasper, you were asked about Seventh-day Adventists and you only told them about the Sabbath. People were angry at me. You know why? They want me to do last day events on Tony Gonzaga. I cannot understand that. Right? I cannot go on full Tony Gonzaga and great controversy in Tony Gonzaga. I need to know where she's at 1 to 10. At the end of the show, I gave her the book, Desire of Ages, because she was asking me, what inspired you to read the Bible? I said, oh, this book inspired me to read the Bible. She's a number 8, but I can't give her a number 10. Are you following? So you cannot do a number 10 to a number 1, people. That's why our evangelistic campaign kind of works. If people, the rural they are, it works. If it's in the city, not really. So we need to adapt. I am not discriminating evangelism at all. I'm a pastor. I love preaching. But it needs to adapt where people are. Right? So, yeah, Tony, go ahead.
Thank you. I have one more question. Is there anyone from the audience have a question?
Yes.
I have one last question. We're pressed for time. Any questions from the floor? Going once, going twice. All I see is cameras looking at me. Thank you for adding me to your photo line. Okay. Sir.
Yes.
Just information, I really, that's a really good idea. Actually, a lot of missiologists and then also missiologists for communication media, they use that scale.
Yes.
But slightly different meaning, that gospel receptivity scale.
Yes.
Or faith stages, they
Yes.
use that one.
Yes.
But nowadays, they don't measure how religious you are. Because many people we face that they are spiritual, just not religious.
Yes.
But they are ready to accept the gospel.
Yes.
So this is just information, say that, but this scale is everywhere, in every religion, even Muslim society, Buddhist society, Hindu society, even secular. So I appreciate that you present this one. Then this is kind of a really useful. I utilized this one for the even Muslim society, it worked. Hindus, it worked. So everywhere it works. So just I'd like to affirm this approach.
Yes, and I agree with Pastor, because I think many people are religious. They're just not churchy. Yeah, they're religious but not churchy. They don't know church jargons, but they're very religious. Their spirituality really longs for something.
Yeah, especially when you have content that touches people's hearts in different ways,
Yes.
right? I mean, whether it's like, say, in terms of psychological help, or mental health,
Yes.
or even physical health. There's certain topics that reach out, right? But it's how we package that platform or package that content that makes us relevant, because we've used the common denominators of why we need to reach out to people, to say the health message in itself. Right. So because of the little time we have left, Jack, if you were, because you said that you love being a pastor, if you were to come back to pastoral ministry, what would be the content that you would be developing to reach people around you?
If I go back to pastoral ministry, I'll be doing the same thing. Doing social media. Again, I really encourage you, pastors, communicators, to do your own page. Just do it under your name. I promise you, it's not against. People say, oh, you did your own thing, you have your own brand, Jasper, like that. You're against the church. No. I like to brand Adventism through and under a personal identity, not just an organization, because it attracts people more.
Correct,
I know a lot
correct.
of Adventists who do not follow SSD, yet follows me. Or secular people who follows Tony, probably doesn't follow SSD too, but follows Tony.
But I don't make content like you, bro.
Yeah, no, but just do a personal approach to your communication. I think, and I'll say this honestly, Tony, I think one of the things that we lack as communicators is touch of authenticity and personality.
Yeah.
It's not human enough. It's institutionalized. If you don't believe me, look at the way we make our posters. It's all about this guy who does this, and pastor from where? It's not personal. People don't listen to institutions anymore. They listen, it needs to be packaged in a personal way. You know, and people, like for example, I'll give you an example. Tony Gonzaga. People don't follow Tony Gonzaga Studios. She's followed as a person.
Yeah.
And that's supposed to be the branding of each one. You guys.
Yeah.
You guys, you need to have your brand, especially communicators and leaders. Do your own branding. Be more personal to people.
Yeah, I think that's going to come out, Jasper, in
Yes.
some of our topics this afternoon and also tomorrow. And also, you're going to be part of the video edit this afternoon, because there's some aspects, guys, that we really wanted to touch on, especially on some of our reports. Like you were saying, Jasper, it has to be personal. There has to be a human story to it. I do understand that we work in communications and we have to report the facts, the numbers, and all those things, but often it doesn't make sense to people. It doesn't connect to people. And instead of them knowing more of how we do things, it's what we just did. And that's what we want to learn. So anyways,
One more point, Tony, last one. This is a classic example of this, is that a few years ago when we built the Jungle School, I set up an account under my name, and then we built a brand for the Jungle School. But it's all just stories, Tony. It's being humanized. It's very human. People have names. People respond to it. And the Jungle Schools have raised about $100,000, 5 million pesos in 1 year. And this is mostly non-SDA. Now, we're establishing a high school, and we have just approved about 27 million peso to build a high school.
wow.
And it's all about authentic conversation. Do you get that? It's not like an institutionalized thing. That's why I never promote, it's a PAMAS project. No, it's a Jasper thingy. It's a small little thing. And people are like, wow, I want to join that. I think that's the church, that's something that we lack as a church, humanity. It needs to be personal to people for them to be on board.
Yeah. And also to buy in.
Yeah.
Well, Jap,
yes.
thank you for
Thank
your
you so
time.
much.
Can we give him a hand?
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.